डॉक्टर बाबासाहेब आंबेडकर ओपन युनिव्हर्सिटी.
Namaskar students, I Dr. Bini Waghela, Assistant Professor from English Department, School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University, Ahmedabad. Welcome you all to the video lecture series of second year Bachelor of Arts in English. In this session, I am going to discuss unit number 5, that is Contemporary Age, Historical Background and Characteristics from paper number 6. Structure of this session is Introduction, Historical Survey of English Literature, the Contemporary Age, Prose, Poetry, Fiction and Drama. Characteristics of Contemporary Literature, Major Modernist Writers and Conclusion. Let's start with the introduction. This module should be the most useful right at the start of the course or later as a resource for exercises in revision and to help you reflect on value judgments in literary criticism. It may also be suitable for university students and the general reader who is interested in the history of literature. I have not specially sought to express my own value judgments but to reflect those which are commonly found written by famous critics. I hope rather that it will be used as a point of reference or way into literature for the beginners. And while I have made a selection from the many authors who deserve study, I have throughout presented them in a chronological sequence. At the end, I consider briefly questions of genre and literary value. Contemporary age in English language historiography denotes the period known as historical period from approximately 1945 to the present. Sometimes we also use the term modern, which was coined in the 16th century to indicate present or recent times. The European Renaissance started in Italy, marked the transition between the late Middle Age and early modern times. It was strengthened by the rediscovery of classical art and literature and resulted in expanding the scope of thought and knowledge. Let's move towards the second point, that is historical survey of English literature. English, as we know it, descends from the language spoken by the North Germanic tribes who settled in England from the 5th century AD onwards. The earliest written works in Old English were probably composed orally at first. By the time literacy becomes widespread, Old English is effectively a foreign and dead language. From 1066 onwards, the language is known to scholars as Middle English. Ideas and themes from French and Celtic literature appear in English writing at about this time. But the first great name in English literature is that of Geoffrey Chaucer. Chaucer introduces the iambic pentameter line, the rhyming couplet, and other rhymes used in Italian poetry, and his greatest work is mostly narrative poetry, which we find in Troilus and Cresside and the Canterbury Tales. The Middle English period sees a huge transition in the language, culture, and lifestyle of England and results in what we can recognize today as a form of modern English. This period is home to the likes of Chaucer, Thomas Malory, and Robert Henryson. Renaissance, also known as early modern period, and is often subdivided into four parts, including the Elizabethan age, the Jacobean age, the Caroline age, and the Commonwealth period. The neoclassical period is also subdivided into ages, including the Restoration, the Augustan age, and the age of sensibility. The Romantic period began in 1789 with the start of French Revolution. But some also believe that 1798, the publication year for William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge's book Lyrical Ballads. So this ballad is its true beginning. The period ends with the passage of the Reform Bill, which signaled the Victorian era. And with the death of Walter Scott, the Victorian period was a time of great social, religious, intellectual, and economic issues, highlighted by the passage of the Reform Bill, which expanded voting rights. So, this period is in strong contention with the Romantic period for being the most popular, influential, and prolific period in all of English and world literature. The Edwardian period includes incredible classic novelists such as Joseph Conrad, Ford Madox Ford, Rudyard Kipling, H.G. Wells, and Henry James, who was born in America but who spent most of his writing career in England. Notable poets such as Alfred Noyes and William Butler Yeats, as well as dramatists such as James Barrie, George Bernard Shaw, and John Galsworthy. It was followed by the Georgian period. Now let's talk about the contemporary age. The modernist period in English literature occupied the years from shortly after the beginning of the 20th century through roughly 1965. In broad terms, the period was marked by sudden and unexpected breaks with traditional ways of viewing and interacting with the world. Experimentation and individualism became virtues, where in the past they were often heartily discouraged. The contemporary age starts with the modern period and assimilates the postmodern period as well. The modern period traditionally applies to works written after the start of World War I, and postmodern age begins about the time that World War II ended. Contemporary literature reflects current trends in life and culture. Common features include bold experimentation with subject matter, style, and form, encompassing narrative verse and drama. New criticism also appeared at this time, led by the likes of Woolf, Eliot, William Emerson, and others, which strengthened literary criticism. In general, it is difficult to say whether modernism has ended, though we know that postmodernism has developed after and from it. For now, the genre remains ongoing. Post-structuralism, literary theory, and criticism also developed to a great length during this time. Contemporary written works tend to be influenced by the affluent lifestyle that followed World War II. But this literary class is deep seated in the West and ruin caused by the war. It was accompanied, it was accompanied by a personal cynicism, disappointment, frustration, and lack of expectation. Well defined, realistic, and highly developed characters are important in classifying a written works as contemporary, and most writing in this category features stories that are more character driven than plot driven. Typical characteristics of the contemporary period include reality based stories with strong characters and a believable story. Indeed, a central preoccupation of contemporary age is with the inner self and consciousness. In contrast to the romantic world view, the contemporary literature was not so much concerned for nature and being. The writers of contemporary age see decay and a growing alienation of the individual due to rapid industrialization, industrialization. The machinery of modern society is perceived as impersonal, capitalist, and antagonist to the artistic impulse. So, in character development, both modern and postmodern literature explore subjectivism, turning from external reality to examine inner states of consciousness. In many cases, drawing on modernist examples in the stream of consciousness, we all know that the style of Virginia Woolf and James Joyce or explorative poems like The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. In addition, both modern and postmodern literatures explore fragmentariness in narrative and character construction. Contemporary prose. Contemporary or postmodernist literature does not refer to everything written in the postmodernist period, but the theater of the absurd, the beat generation, and magic realism have significant similarities. Contemporary prose flourished during and after the 1940s. It mainly dealt with reality based stories with strong characters and a believable story. Prose is a realistic in nature and is well defined. It presents characters in realistic and sometimes developed even in harsh environments, because sometimes the stories are character driven only. Sometimes the stories are character driven only. If we speculate, we will find that commonly the prose is ironic and reflects current political, social, and personal issues. But at the same time, it is found to have elements like personal cynicism, disillusionment, and frustration. Prose deals with situations those often present two contradictory arguments. The chief characteristic is that the literature may reflect a growing skepticism in the existence of God, as well as distrust or lack of faith in traditional institutions. contemporary poetry. If we evaluate all contemporary poetries in the sense of the modernist literary movement, we cannot consider everything as modern. So, modern and contemporary poetry cannot replace each other. Contemporary poetry is known for its spatial characteristics. Probable subjects for poetry were now infinite, and poets enjoyed this new freedom while composing their work of art. Stream of consciousness, free verse, and preference for suggestion or ambiguity of ideas are common trends for contemporary poetry. Thomas Stearns Eliot, and the most acclaimed modernist poet, is known for creating an atmosphere to return to highly intellectual, allusive poetry. T.S. Eliot tended to favor intellect over emotion and valued themes of alienation and isolation as reactions to the Romanticism. Eliot's compositions were entirely in the modern style because he was never nostalgic about the past, and he effortlessly moves from very high formal verse into a more conversational and easy style. Yet even when his poetic voice sounds very colloquial, there is a current underneath which hides secondary meanings. It is this layering of meanings and contrasting of styles that mark modernist poetry in general and T.S. Eliot in particular. Undoubtedly, Eliot was the pioneer of the ironic mode in poetry with a purpose to present deceptive appearance, hiding common truths. Contemporary poetry was also hailed as it favored experimentation with genre and form. One is confronted by biblical sounding verse forms, quasi conversational interludes, dance, and frequent references, which frustrate even the most well read readers, and sections that resemble prose more than poetry. Contemporary fiction. Reflective impulses of the contemporary age affected the contemporary fiction as well. Modernism introduced a new and a unique kind of narration to be the fiction, which changed the entire essence of novel writing. The unreliable narrator replaced the well-informed and wise, trustworthy narrator of previous centuries. Stream of consciousness became the buzzword. Stream of consciousness was introduced to survey the inner space of the human mind. At the same time, the psychoanalytic theories of Sigmund Freud had come into mainstream, and they accept it. These two forces work together to alter people's basic understanding of what constituted truth and reality. James Joyce's Ulysses is the best example of contemporary fiction. Contemporary fiction spoke of the inner self and consciousness. Instead of progress and new technology, the modernist writer saw a decline of civilization over the use of machinery and increased capitalization, which alienated the individual. Whereas earlier, most literature had a clear beginning, middle, and end, or introduction, conflict, and resolution. The modernist story was often more of a stream of consciousness. Irony, satire, and comparisons were often employed to point out society's ills. Now let's talk about contemporary drama. The drama of modernist movement in England was much less innovative in technique and in comparison with the contemporary poetry or novel. Drama in this age is essentially a drama of ideas rather than action. The stage is used by dramatists to give expression to certain ideas which they wanted to spread in the society. Realism is the most significant and outstanding quality of the modern English literature, or in modern English drama, popularized by Henrik Ibsen. The dramatists were interested in naturalism, and it was their endeavor to deal with real problems of life in a realistic technique to their plays. Robert Arthur Jones, Galsworthy, and G.B. Shaw also followed the tradition. Contemporary dramatists used theatre as a means for bringing about reforms in the conditions of society prevailing in their days. So, problem play also gained importance dealing with the problems of marriage, justice, law, administration, and strife. T.S. Eliot gave importance to poetic plays and was the realistic prose drama of the modern drama. Stephen Phillips, John Drinkwater, Yeats, these were from those who wrote poetic plays. Another trend visible in those days of modern English drama is in the direction of using history and biography for dramatic technique. There are many beautiful historical and biographical plays in modern dramatic literature. Now let's talk about the major characteristics of contemporary literature. First characteristic is individualism. The individual is more interesting than society. Specifically, modernist writers were fascinated with how the individual adapted to the changing world. In some cases, the individual triumphed over obstacles, Ernest Hemingway is especially remembered for vivid characters that accepted their circumstances at face value and preserved. Second characteristic is experimentation. Modernist writers broke free of old forms and techniques. Poets abandoned traditional rhyme schemes and wrote in free verse. Novelists defined all expectations. Writers mixed images from the past with modern languages and themes, creating a collage of styles. The inner workings of consciousness were a common subject for modernists. So, this preoccupation led to a form of narration called stream of consciousness, where the point of view of the novel meanders in a pattern resembling human thought. Authors James Joyce and Virginia Woolf, along with poets T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound, are well known for their experimental modernist works. Third characteristic is absurdity. So, the bloodshed and slaughter of two world wars, that is 1 and 2, profoundly affected writers of the contemporary age. Several great English poets died or were wounded in World War I. For many writers, the world was becoming a more absurd place every day. Modernist authors depicted this absurdity in their works. Fourth characteristic is symbolism. The modernist writers infused objects, people, places, and events with significant meanings. They imagine a reality with multiple layers, many of them hidden or in a sort of code. They left much more to the reader's imagination than earlier writers, leading to open-ended narratives with multiple interpretations. For example, James Joyce's Ulysses. It incorporates distinctive open-ended symbols in each chapter. Now let's talk about fifth characteristic, that is formalism. Writers of the modernist period saw literature more as a craft than a flowering of creativity. The idea of literature as craft fed the modernist desire for creativity and originality. Modernist poetry often includes foreign languages, dense vocabulary, and invented words. Now let's move towards conclusion of this unit. Artists of this newer generation pursued a more democratic, pluralistic mood for poetry and the novel. The influence of this modernist literature continues to be quite astonishing. The modern poet critics change the way the people think about artists and creative pursuits. The modern novelist changed the way many people perceive truth and reality. Much of the focus in the study of postmodern literature is on intertextuality, the relationship between one text and the another, or one text within the interwoven fabric of literary history. In postmodernist literature, this can be homage to or a parody of past styles. It can be seen as a representation of the chaotic, pluralistic, and information drenched aspects of postmodern society. Metafiction is essentially writing about the writing of foregrounding the apparatus, making the artificiality of art or the functionality of fiction apparent to the reader, and generally disregards the necessity for willful suspension of disbelief. It is often employed to undermine the authority of the author for unexpected narrative shifts, to advance a story in a unique way, for emotional distance, or to comment on the act of storytelling. Magic realism also took shape. The themes and subjects are often imaginary, somewhat outlandish and fantastic, and with a certain dreamlike quality. Here are some questions which will help you to check your progress. Question 1 is contemporary poetry. What is contemporary poetry? Question 2 is, who is the most acclaimed poet of contemporary poetry or contemporary age? How did he gain his place in the literary world? Question 3 is, what are the various characteristics of contemporary poetry? Question 4 is, who introduced stream of consciousness? Question 5 is, what is the relationship of fruit with stream of consciousness? And question 6 is, name of the author, name of the major novelist of contemporary age. So friends, these questions will help you to check your progress about this particular unit. So thank you so much for watching this video. See you soon. Namaskar.
हेलो एक मिनट खाली બેસો એન્ડ ફરી લઈ લો ખાલી આજનો
And means just thank you did na?
હા હા બસ એટલે બસ નોર્મલ આજનું સેશન જે કર્યું એ પ્રમાણે ઓકે સેવ લે ઓકે
Done?
સ્ટાર્ટ
So students, these questions will help you to know to check your progress for this particular unit. Thank you so much for watching this video. Namaskar.
स्वाध्यायः